Okay, so here I am, as promised, as hoped for, with Suzanne from France, and I'm hoping that we're going to have a long and fruitful discussion about the triple heater and embryology. So, hi, Suzanne. Thank you so much for joining us.
Great. Well, oh, sorry. Yes.
Carry on. You hope what?
Oh, no, I hope I can add something, because a lot of embryology, it's quite difficult to talk about it with the triple heater in a way, because it's not a specific organ in Western medicine. So embryology is looking at quite specific things. You know, if I was talking about lung, that's very specific. Yeah. We can say when it was developed. Whereas triple heater is really just my thoughts of working with triple heater. And a lot of it comes also from my work with the extraordinary vessels. So I just want people to be aware of that. It is only my interpretation, and because there's nothing that can be, there's nothing really solid to hook it onto in a way.
Right.
Yeah.
But we are probably looking at a very fluid stage in the development of the embryo, aren't we?
Yeah.
I mean, literally fluid, in the sense that the embryo is still almost just jelly-like, isn't it, in its quality? And I'm wondering, you see, I know that you, like me, are fascinated by this idea of the triple heater as the messenger of the source key.
Yes, exactly.
And communicating with the kidneys. And some sources say that the triple heater is the founder of the meridian system. So that might mean that the fact that it doesn't have a form is actually quite relevant to a particular stage in the embryo before the organs are exactly being formed. So what would you be able to tell us about that stage?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I feel. It's before the organs. And as you say, in some texts, they do actually talk about the kidneys, sorry, the triple heater being the messenger of the kidneys. And as you've already talked, I think in your presentation on the triple heater, it's very much the joining of the fire and the water. And we see that from where its U points are just above the kidneys. So it's really, sometimes it's called the messenger of the kidneys, isn't it? That it just moves that energy of the kidneys. And as we know, the kidneys are storing our jing, or our essence, and they're what kind of ignites us in a way. And it's interesting because in embryologists talk about ignition, like a fire, a flame comes in and kind of lights everything up. And it's often talked at, because we were talking just earlier about the whole gastrulation stage, the stage when you're getting the three, as the organs develop from the three germ cell layers, the third germ cell layer. I mean, I relate this very much to conception vessel, governing vessel, and penetrating vessel, Du, Ren, and Chong. When we, at 3 weeks after conception, the embryo, though, is quite defined. I don't necessarily see it as jelly-like. It is in jelly. I mean, it is much more mobile and fluid because it doesn't have any bones or anything like that at 3 weeks. But what I find fascinating, it is a flat line. It's called a trilaminar disc. But at 2 weeks, it was a bi-laminar disc. So I find that fascinating, because you can say that is governing vessel and conception vessel, because at 2 weeks already, we have a head, or what will become our head and our brain. Well, we have a top and we have a bottom, but it's the bottom of our body, not our legs. So our bottom will be where our pelvic floor, our perineum. So we've got our head and our pelvic floor, and we've got a front and we've got a back, and we're surrounded though in fluid, and we're very fluid. And then at the 3rd week, to create this disc between the two, the trilaminar disc, or the third cell layer, in between conception and governing vessel, you get the penetrating vessel emerging, the Chong, which will be the sea of blood. But where it emerges from is actually quite low down in our future lower back, around the area of Ming Men. So I think that actually, for me, does show this relationship with the fire and the water. You've got this sort of spark that creates a third cell layer round about Ming Men. But obviously we can't be so precise as it's Ming Men, and the triple heater U points are just above Ming Men. So it really shows triple heater is bringing some kind of fire and water movement within the body, and it isn't related to an organ. So it probably, along with the extraordinary vessels, helps to create the form. And because anyway, it is in all of our body, isn't it? As we know, the triple heater meridian is really only a small part of what the triple heater is. I actually like to think of the triple heater and work with it as the 3 burning spaces, and then how that connects into our arms and our legs. And so it does make sense, as you were theorizing, that it probably is one of the first within the 12 meridians to develop, because it's pre-formed, it's touching every area of the body. So it's very much, yeah,
it goes everywhere, doesn't it?
Yeah. And its meridian is a bit limited. And then also at the time, you see, even with the extraordinary vessels, you can say at 3 weeks, you've got Du Mai, Ren Mai, Chom. Do people prefer Du, Ren, Chom, or governing, conception, penetrating? I'll use the 3. Because triple heater is an interesting, because girdle vessel is one of the extraordinary vessels which I feel emerges around this 3-week phase. But girdle vessel doesn't have a germ cell layer, because basically I think most people have heard about the endoderm, the ectoderm, and the mesoderm. Those are what those 3.
Well, could I just ask you about that, just to interrupt?
Oh, okay.
Because I have heard about them. I've never really understood them, to be honest. How do you explain them, sort of, in your courses?
Okay.
I mean,
well, Masanaga, I say sometimes people have heard, because Masanaga talks about them, but he relates them to the 12 meridians. And for me, that it's not quite the same. It's not the same. Basically, we start off as the pre-embryo is basically cells, 1 supercell at conception, immediately after conception, then coming to 2, then 4, then 8, then 16. More or less. Sometimes it's 3, 5. It's not necessarily, but it's basically doubling. And sometimes people say, I have seen in books, like 2 cells, that's conception and governing. But actually it isn't. This is very early on. This is within the first 24 hours after conception. We become 2 cells. But those 2 cells are pretty much identical. So you can't say they're conception and governing. And then even the 4 cells, and around about the 8 cell stage, until the 8 cell stage, each of these cells can create any part of our physical body, but also any part of our outer body. So our outer body is our amniotic sac, our placenta, our fetal membranes. They're all coming from these early cells. And then about 1632 cells, some of these cells start to specialize, and some can only become our placenta and our membranes and everything, and others can only become our body. So there's a differentiation, and this is still quite early on, after a few days. But then the cells of what are called the inner cell mass. So in embryology, they often talk about the inner cell mass and the outer cell mass. And if they don't differentiate, then you get what's called a molar pregnancy, where everything just is chaotic and doesn't develop properly. But if they do differentiate, then we're talking about the inner cell mass that develops by 3 weeks, this trilaminar disc. It only can develop it actually after implantation, because it needs blood, even before the placenta is developed.
Implantation in the wall of the uterus, yes.
Implantation, which happens, so in the first phase, we're spiraling down in a natural conception. Now these days it can happen in a lab, but in a natural conception, we're spiraling down the fallopian tube, and we actually don't grow in size. So we're kind of falling apart within this same size space. And when we arrive in the womb, we look for somewhere to implant, and that's where our placenta will develop. But obviously it takes time to develop, like the baby takes time to develop. And the placenta starts just taking blood from the mother, and now the actual egg, fertilized egg, can start to grow in size, because before it's not changed in size at all. It's actually got a hard shell around it, and it stays the same volume. It's just that the number of cells inside increases. It can only grow in size once it's implanted on the wall of the uterus, and then it grows quite rapidly, because it implants roughly around a week to 10 days. So then it forms this 2-cell disc at the 2nd week. So it's rapid growth because it's taking nourishment from outside. Before, it's independent. That's why it can survive.
Interesting. The hard shell around it, and it's pretty much pure essence in there, isn't it? In that container.
Yeah.
And then once it starts taking in blood, then that's like the beginning stage of, and how interesting that, I mean, it's taking in from the placenta, which is attached ultimately into the navel area. So it's almost like the spleen starts its beginning absorption effort right at that stage. It's fascinating.
Yeah,
amazing. Carry on.
I think it, for me, it's more penetrating vessel, the sea of blood.
Yes, of course it is. It's not really.
But it is, I agree with you, because sometimes people say, oh, but you can't work with, the meridians don't exist until the organ's formed. I think it's the other way round. I think the meridian is there, or the energy of the meridian is there before the organs form to help create the organ. So that actually links in with the triple heater. I'm with you on that. The energy of triple heater is there because it's going to help move everything all around, and therefore then create the organs. And what we think of the meridians is, yes, maybe the pathway with the points and everything, that comes later, but the energy of the meridian, like you said, you were saying we're pure essence, but we're also pure ki, and we're pure, all the organs are there. So you could say the energy of the organ's there, then the organ develops, and then you could say the meridian develops, but we can still work with the energy, because that's what creates energy exists before form. And now why I'm emphasizing that is because that's really, I think, what the triple heater is. It's like helping the form develop. So this trilaminar disc, though, at 3 weeks that I was talking about, is called it's 3 germ cell layers. And I mean, I could, if you want, I've got a chart that I give, because it's, I don't want to give you too much theory now, just talking. I have got a little chart I've made of what things come out of they're called the endoderm, the ectoderm, and the mesoderm, and what structures of the body. But pretty much, it's obviously not 100%, but pretty much the endoderm is our digestive tract. So you can see much relates to the conception vessel, and it's like, you know, from our mouth to our anus, and all organs emerge out, all the digestive system organs emerge out of that, but also the lung bud is at the top of that as well. So conception vessel, and then governing vessel is more like the nervous system, the spinal cord, the brain, and the outer layers of the body, the skin, things like that. And then in between the mesoderm, that's much more related to the penetrating vessel, and penetrating vessel, fascia, heart, well, we know it's called the sea of blood. So that's all like the in-betweeny things, the blood vessels. It's fascinating. I find it's really fascinating. And I almost feel that as the penetrating vessels are rising, that's when the triple heater is coming into being, but also the girdle vessel, because girdle vessel doesn't have these 3 germ cell layers. So of course, this is all just putting together my understanding of embryology with Chinese medicine, because the Chinese, the ancient Chinese, didn't know about the endoderm, the ectoderm, and the mesoderm. But it's amazing they felt that conception, governing, and penetrating are the first, but with the girdle vessel kind of around them, being that link between the inner and the outer body. And I'll tell you what I also find fascinating, that I think you may know, but maybe your students, if they don't know so much about the extraordinary vessels, each of the extraordinary vessels has what's called a regulating point, which is either on the hands or the feet, which basically is a way of connecting with the energy of that vessel. Now, the regulating point for the girdle vessel is actually a gallbladder point, but its paired regulating point is triple heater 5. And girdle vessel is a bit like triple heater, I think, in a way. It's like it's moving, it's around the center. And I think you said that in your talk about the triple heater, you linked it with the girdle vessel because, well, girdle vessel is very much the energy of the lower burner. So of course it's going to happen with triple heater. But girdle vessel is also said to be a cocoon all around the body and to connect the lower body with the upper body. So I actually think that the girdle vessel is very closely linked with the 3 burners, because if it's blocked, then energy can't flow into the middle burner or the upper burner or into our legs. Girdle vessel has a strong link with our legs. And so it makes complete sense that its regulating point is triple heater 5, and triple heater kind of helps the girdle vessel move through the 3 burners. So perhaps the triple heater is arising at the same time as the girdle vessel from the Ming Men area. Ming Men governing vessel 4 is also contained within the triple heater, within the girdle vessel pathway, but so is triple heater. I mean, most things are contained within the girdle vessel pathway, but it's quite interesting that as the kidneys start to move and create, and the fire starts to move around the body, also fire linked with blood and the heart, remembering that the heart is the first organ that actually forms. The primitive heart is already beating round about 23, 24 days, so into the 4th week. During the 4th week, the heart beats, and it's the blood flowing around the body that nourishes and enables the organs to grow. So it's very interesting. Triple heater isn't normally talked about in the text so much about as the blood. It's more just the energy, and it's water and fire.
It's more related with the key, isn't it? That the heart protector is the mother of the blood, and the triple heater is the deliverer of the key or something. Yeah,
exactly. But you've got girdle vessel, penetrating vessel. Penetrating vessel is much more the blood, and girdle vessel is all the things around. And then you've got, like you say, heart protector and triple heater, and heart protector is more about the movement and protection of the heart and blood. And then the triple heater is the heat and the fire and that relationship between water, which of course water, if you think about the jing and the essence and the fluid and the fire, that's what helps create the fire between the kidneys. I mean, and then it moves into
you can't just have the water sitting there, can you, all wet? you have to have it animated, don't you? You have to have it brought to life, as it were, so that the water is the form and the fire is the energy, and you have to have them both.
And so in that sense you could say, well, triple heater must develop before the heart in order to create the heart.
Wow. That's radical.
It's only ideas, but you told me you had this idea of like lights in the baby.
The blood exists in the embryo before the heart, doesn't it? Yeah. There's that. You introduced us to Gil Hedley, the anatomist.
Yeah, I love Gil
the
Hedley.
YouTube anatomist, and he's got a lovely video where he's actually unwrapping a human heart on the dissecting table, and he's pointing out how it is actually the movement of the blood, the spiraling movement of the blood, that shapes the heart, that the heart is a kind of formed in a spiral. So this just goes so much with the girdle vessel, doesn't it, which is connected with that spiraling energy around the body. Yes, and the movement. So the blood is there, and the triple heater moves it. So there we are, and yes, and it creates the heart.
Yeah.
Ta-da! That's great.
I mean, it does make sense. I agree with you. I think triple heater is a really fascinating vessel, and also if you're wanting to stay with embryology a bit, so you've got this 3 weeks, you've got this the 3 cell layers, and then out of that the other organ, first the heart, but then the next organ, the brain, and the heart develops to support the brain. So they're very closely connected. And in Chinese medicine, they often talk about the brain and the heart is kind of one organ sometimes, isn't it? It's hard to distinguish because they are quite indistinguishable in some ways, especially in this early phase. I don't know if you know, but some of the early cells of the heart, when we're in this 3-cell disc, I said we've got the top. Some of the cells of the heart are actually at the top, and then the brain is below, and then it's in that 4th week when we curl over, we bring the cells back into the heart.
Folding, yes. That is described by Phillip Beach in that book that we both like. There's a diagram, isn't there, of the heart being at the top and the hara being at the bottom, and then they fold in to the places that we recognize now. So,
and that's week. So much happens in the first 4 weeks. It's quite astounding, really. And then the organs. So we talk about the extraordinary vessels being there first, and maybe the triple heater, and the organs do start to develop quite rapidly over the next. Well, in the 4th, 5th week, they're in their early form. I mean, the heart, of course, we talked about the heart at 3 weeks. It's only a very primitive pump. It's not got 4 chambers or anything. It's just like a basic pump to get the blood moving so that all things can grow and develop. But what was I going to say about triple heater? Yes. So it also, in this 4th week, we start to get, I don't know if I told you this before in the other one, before we get our arms and our legs, we have little limb buds, they're called. So what will become our hands and what will become our feet. And our hands, we could say, are literally kind of growing out of our heart. They're there, and then they do spirally movement. And our feet grow out of our pelvis. So that completely explains why we've got the heart points on the hand, but also points on the heels very much work with the reproductive organs and kidney and bladder and things like that.
Fascinating, yeah.
And that's
amazing.
What links with the extraordinary vessel. So going back to this triple heater point, triple heater 5. But what I find is fascinating as well is that triple heater 5 is the regulating point for what are called the linking vessels, the way channels. I don't know if you know about the way.
Yes.
But the main image I have for the way now, and it is contained in its ideogram, the Chinese character for it, are like the wings of a bird. And so they're a bit like heart protector and triple heater.
Beautiful.
A bit more before heart protector and triple heater become developed. And so it is this movement of opening the heart and holding the heart, protecting the heart and gathering in. And
Lovely.
That's the linking vessels, and their regulating point is triple heater 5 for the yang linking and heart protector 6 for the yin linking. So even with that, you see that there's this kind of movement from the hands, and that's also triple heater will begin this movement of opening of the upper burner, and that's where triple heater meridian will end up being, unless you work with Mazanaga triple heater in the legs. But there is this movement, of course, through the whole body for triple heater. I would feel it can't just be limited to the upper body. Anyway, it's the burner and the lower.
Shen and Gui. I went into it in some detail in the webinar because there's this idea of Shen and Gui is the expansion and the return is really, really basic to yin and yang and the body. And there are so many rhythms, aren't there, which do this. The rhythm of the breath, the rhythm of the heart, the lubbed up, and then the craniosacral rhythm, etc. Can I ask you, thinking of craniosacral rhythms, the fascia? I know that there are some of the participants in the webinars who are really interested in the fascia, and I do actually myself link triple heater in the adult, in the grown person, link it very much with the fascia as possible conductors of information. But that's another issue. But can you tell us something about the development of fascia in the embryo? Because you mentioned it as being part of the, you've got a cat tail there.
I had the window open, but maybe cats, I don't know if cats are helpful for triple heater. Oh, you're not sure you want to be? No,
Definitely doesn't want to be helpful in any way.
yeah.
Anyway, so even not relating it to triple heater, but just some mention of the fascia, how they develop and
Well,
what their
they
place is.
out of this third cell layer, the
Yeah,
mesoderm. So I'll make sure I give you
yeah.
that. But if we're talking about, yeah, it's all making sense to me now talking to you, because I never explained it exactly this way. But yeah, triple heater and girdle vessel are very connected, but triple heater and the linking vessels are very connected. So it's all about this whole kind of movement. Because, okay, girdle vessel is also paired with penetrating vessel. So girdle vessel has this more kind of triple heatery quality energy of like being able to be in all of the spaces, but it's paired with penetrating vessel, and penetrating vessel is arising out of the third germ cell layer, the mesoderm, and very much creates the fascia. So it's like blood and movement and giving us form and enabling this movement within the arms and the fascia and the tissue all around the organs. And it's also a bit everywhere, I feel, penetrating vessel. It's the only one of what are called the first four vessels, which also has a branch in the legs. It also, its paired point is heart protector 6, because it's like girdle vessel is triple heater 5 and paired point for penetrating vessel is heart protector 6. So it just does feel like it is. We can more clearly link the penetrating vessel, I think, to fascia, because it's kind of all with the blood and creating form. It's not just about blood in blood cells, as you know, the Chinese, it's a much bigger concept. It's about nourishing and helping everything to grow. And it is related to this germ cell layer from which the fascia and all connective tissue emerge. And I always associate that a lot with penetrating vessel. But if you see the triple heater is also part of that, working with girdle vessel. And I think also in our Western mind or our modern mind, we tend to separate things off more. But I just see everything as just much more continuum. I'm sure you do as well. That we often say this is triple heater and this is girdle vessel, but it's never for me, especially the more I understand Chinese medicine, it's more just like you say, there's lots of different rhythms in the body and everything's all quite connected and spiraling. Nothing's linear. I even feel with the 12 meridians now, they're a bit more, they're not, because our body isn't linear. Our body's always doing these different kind of movements and it's never linear, and it's more about opening up and gathering in and all the different rhythms. So I feel we work with maybe these quite linear ideas of what meridians are. And I think especially for the triple heater, it's so much more than just this meridian that it ends up being in the arm. And so when we work with it, if we've understood the journey it's made through helping to create everything, which I do feel it is talked about as the messenger of the kidneys, which is the messenger of the key of the Jing, moving of our essence, helping to create all our form, because that's what essence is about. And then the essence becomes more specific organs and is woven in those organs. But our whole body is, that's why I'm doing this movement, because it helps me connect with it. It's the triple heater is very fluidy. I mean, we are fluid, we're bathed in fluid. Rather than jelly, I think of us as like a fish and just floating around in this fluid, and in order, of course, to come from this 3-cell layer, which is a flat line, we can't be solid. We actually have to move, and all the relationships with everything changes, and there's a connection between the front and the back, and all the relationships change. We're very fluid at this stage. We don't have bones. The fascia's still developing. So we're completely, yeah, maybe you see it as jelly, but I just see it as like we're floating and fluid. And that feels very much the energy of triple heater, that it's in all these different places. It's water, it's fluid, it's formless. It doesn't end up being associated with one organ. It's all of the organs, really, because all of the organs are in the 3 burning spaces, aren't they? And it's giving the heat and the warmth and the light and helping the water to bring forth us different aspects of our soul as well.
Could you say a little bit more about that, about the different aspects of our soul?
Well, each aspect of our soul is finding an expression through different organs, isn't it? So we have the Ben Shen, and you know the Po or the Pro, the lung, which is I always used to get a bit stuck on that, because I think, well, how can the Pro be the first? Because actually the lung is one of the last organs to mature. But I think we have to say, well, no, they're not talking only about the physical organ. They're talking about the whole energy of the lung, which is taking on our identity as a separate being, that we are dependent on the mother, but we still have our own being, and we keep, even at conception, we can be quite different in our nature than our family. We are of our ancestors, but we have our own Shen, our own soul, the heart, the spirit that contains all the other aspects of our being is there. And I believe we've come into this body already with, and the Chinese certainly believed it, our destiny, our pathway, our different things are containers, our family, how we're born, the historical period. But then it's up to us what to do with it. So it's very much that then we've got to take a form. And
that's very similar. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah,
it's very similar to the way that people are now talking about the genome, because we began with having this idea, didn't we, that your genes are your destiny. You cannot escape your genetic inheritance. But they're discovering far more now that genes actually change and adjust according to the environment. And this, to me, is very triple heater, because the whole Masunaga idea is of the triple heater actually mediating between the core and the surface and adjusting to the environment. And we are, in a sense, really influenced by our environment, aren't we?
Yeah, and I agree. Yeah, I mean, I agree with Masunaga on that. And our first environment is the womb, and already that's also been shown by epigenetics. We can be, depending on our experience in the womb, certain genes are switched on or switched off. I mean, that 9 months in the womb, as the Chinese said, really sets the stage. It fixes, basically, like I was saying, we have this one fertilized egg, and there's the whole potential. But then as it differentiates, and we form and everything becomes more differentiated till we end up with what we now know as our human body. But it's all come from that one cell. So there is this resonance within the cell of it. But then how it all moves through, I think I've lost my train of thought with this. You'll have to tell me there's something I wanted to say about all of that. But this
it's just so amazing that you just have so much to say, and it's so wonderfully cosmic. But we could just go on forever, couldn't we?
But I think maybe it's good to encourage your students to think about it, because it's really, I think the essence of what we're saying is the triple heater is the messenger of the kidney, and it's very early on in our embryological development, and it is adapting to the environment. So the triple heater contains, these memories and our connection to how our mother was and what environment we were in, but very much from these early days. We can see it as one of the first energies, and that will be its role forever, helping us to adapt. And that is actually also, if your students want to look up more things, very much linked to the linking vessels as well. This kind of inner-outer connection, relationship with the outer, inner and outer world. And that's really a lot what triple heater is about.
I think they need to come and do a course with you on the extraordinary vessels. Anyway, thank you so much. It's been so fascinating, and I'm sure we'll continue having private chats about this, because we've got a lot to say about it. Thank you so much, Suzanne.
And if any students want to, if you get any questions, then do forward them, and I'll do my best to answer.
That's very kind. And your website is wellmother, isn't it? .co.uk.
And I have a YouTube channel. Actually, if anyone, I'm always looking for ideas of things that would be interesting, videos for people. So maybe I should make a video on the triple heater and embryology. You've got me thinking.
That would be great.
Or other things people want clarity. But thank you for having me here, and yeah.
Well, it's been a privilege and an honor, my dear.
Mm.
Thank you very much. And